introduce myself. My name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United. I am first and foremost a parent of a self-determination program participant who has been very self-determined this week, which has been extremely annoying as his mother. But I think that that's what it's all about, right? And we've entered our second year in self-determination. And just as an aside, we had an amazing team meeting of my son's team for the first time since he's been in self-determination, because COVID has kind of pushed everything back. It was a meeting on a Saturday morning. We were able to pay for everyone to be at the meeting by Zoom, of course. We were able to pay their time. We had tons of ideas floated around, and we have an independent facilitator who's going to implement these ideas. And so this is what self-determination is all about. And as we move forward with my son's plan, or we have his person-centered plan, but this is the implementation of his person-centered plan. I will be sharing the great ideas that we came up with in this SDP Connect. So to hopefully give you guys some ideas. So today, what are we talking about? Today, we are talking about the role of the financial management services. So what I found in the past is that some people come onto our program and have never been here before and don't even know what the FMS stands for. You don't know a lot about the self-determination program. And what I'm going to say is that we're probably not going to go back and explain like what an individual budget is or what a spending plan is in this meeting, but we want to assure you that all of that information is available at any time, 24/7 on our website. We keep a website called the Interchange, or the Self-Determination Interchange. You get it by going to theinterchange.org, and you will be able to see we've done probably 35 already of these SDP Connects over the past year and maybe 15 months. We've done this. And so I want to make sure that you all know that you can get that background information at any point, and you don't have to wait for us to start over. We started over at the beginning in July, and now we're kind of moving through the process of how self-determination works, and we've gotten to the role of the financial management services. So my colleague Molly Kennedy and I will be doing a short presentation for you about the FMS. And then we have an esteemed panel where we're going to be asking them a bunch of questions. At least I have some questions, but I'm sure all of you have questions for them, and we will move forward. So let me get our little slideshow started and share my screen. And I always try to confirm, Molly, are you just seeing my screen?
I'm seeing it right now.
Okay, excellent. Because one time I shared my entire desktop, and you never want to do that. These are little tricks you learn in your life. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is the role of the financial management service. And just always love to point out, we have 2 books on the self-determination program. One is called Thinking Outside the Box. It's a manual. People love it. We have a second book that's more like a little short reader, which tells the stories. It's called Profiles in Self-Determination. It tells the stories of 10 people who are going into the self-determination program and how it changed their life, and also covers a number of people in the pilot project over the last 20 years. I also want to point out, as I saw him come in, that we have Rick Wood with us. And if I could have you, Ed, upgrade him to a co-host, because he's welcome to chime in at any time. Rick Wood is the co-chair of the statewide Self-Determination Advisory Committee, which is a critical group of people representing all 21 regional centers, local committees who are helping to provide oversight of the self-determination program. Okay, So the financial management services, so just a real brief explanation of what they are. First of all, they're the only service that in self-determination you're required to have. The only one. Anything else is based on your person-centered plan. But the reason you have to have it in self-determination is because you can't have the money yourself. We have to use an agency that is bonded, that has a contract with regional centers to handle government monies. Remember that your self-determination funds is a combination of state and federal monies, your taxpayer dollars at work. And so I think it's really, really important for us to have to be able to know that you don't get a checkbook, but you do have responsibility for how the money is spent. And they are vendored. So all the folks you're going to meet today from the FMSs have been vendored with regional centers. What they do is they see your budget, they see your spending plan, and they pay for all your services, your activities, the items you want to purchase that are in your spending plan. And you have a very good flowing relationship with the FMS. They also assist you with hiring employees. So we're going to see a couple of different ways that you hire employees or staff to assist you in meeting your planning goals, or meeting your goals, not your planning goals, but your life goals. They also help by paying the taxes for your workers, and they ensures that all labor laws are being met. They're really critically important. They also provide you with monthly summaries. You have the responsibility to make sure that you don't overspend what you've laid out in your spending plan, because once you run out of money, it's over. And you have to wait until the next year when you get funded again. And so they give you monthly summaries, and they each FMS does it differently, but they're able to tell you, wow, you've overspent here, but you have extra money on this end. They also make sure that the backgrounds and qualifications of the workers that you've hired meet certain standards. Many of you know that anybody who's providing you with direct care support must receive a criminal background check, and they get the results of that criminal background check. They don't get the specifics of it, but they know whether there's a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that individual. Okay, hold on, next page. Here's what you should know is that the FMS does not control your budget. The budget is established through a negotiation with the regional center based on your needs. So you can't blame the FMS. I don't have enough money, and they get a certain amount of money that is negotiated that comes from the regional center. It is not their determination, but they also are not there to tell you what you can spend your money on. That's based on your spending plan, which has been provided to your regional center. We spent some time a couple of weeks ago talking about the spending plan and how it is not approved by your regional center, but regional centers do have the authority and the responsibility to ask you questions about items in your spending plan and ask you to change certain line items if in fact they don't follow the rules of the self-determination program and other parts of law. They help you figure out how much you're going to need when you hire staff, which is really great, and help you develop your spending plan. So, when we were developing my son's spending plan and we knew we were going to be hiring workers, we didn't know what percentage of taxes and how do you budget for their state tax, employment taxes and federal employment taxes. How does this all work? And so you should really work with your FMS and your independent facilitator to help figure out how you budget for your staff. You're going to hear this conversation today among our FMSs. There are three models of FMSs, and we'll explain them very briefly. I'm sure you will have a ton of questions. So you're going to be asking yourself two questions as you're figuring out which of these models. So there's the bill payer model, the sole employer model, and the co-employer model. And the way you decide which of the models you want is, number one, are you going to have staff working directly for you? Okay. Are you going to have a staff who are working for you as opposed to an agency? And if the answer is no, then you are going to be likely going with the bill payer model. But if the answer is yes, then you then have a choice between the sole employer model or the co-employer model. And that's when you answer the second question, which is, how much authority and control do I want over those workers? And how much responsibility do I want over those workers as well? And that will be the difference between the sole and the co-employer model. So let me dig a little deeper into this. So the bill payer model is that you have no staff working directly for you, as I mentioned, that you're using agencies, taking classes, buying items where these bills are sent to the FMS. So there's no sort of employment taxes that needed to be figured out. There's no liability insurance or workers' compensation insurance that need to be purchased. You'll see that we're going to have rates. It's the least expensive model. And so what are examples of people who use a bill payer model? They're people who purchase classes at the YMCA, that you purchase items like diapers or computers, and that instead of you hiring workers directly, you might use a supported living agency. And every month that supported living agency will then bill the FMS, and that agency holds all the liability and pays the payroll taxes for your workers. The sole employer model is the model when you want to have more control and authority over the people that you hire. So you definitely will have staff and employees working for you. You get to really select who it is that you want to be working for you, have complete authority over that. Within reason, obviously, they have to still pass that criminal background check and be able to work legally in the United States. But you are also responsible for arranging for liability insurance and workers' compensation insurance, which we have talked in the past about how one can do that. There's various ways you can have it through your homeowner's insurance. You could try to arrange for it privately through an insurance agent, or many FMSs offer the opportunity to purchase this kind of insurance through them. FMSs are still doing a lot for you. They're still paying the taxes and making sure that laws are followed in the self-determination program. So they're still paying your workers. And they're processing all the payroll. They're verifying those background checks as well as qualifications. And the cost is in the middle, in between co-employer and the bill payer. And then finally is the co-employer model, which you're once again saying that you want to hire people directly as opposed to using an agency, and that you want to share responsibilities for being the employer of record with the FMS. So the FMS is the employer, and with that, the participant has the ability to still hire and fire employees, but the FMS has input in that process. So you might hear from an FMS in the co-employer model, we're not going to let you hire that person because that person has a DUI or driving under the influence on their record. Maybe there's something about them that makes them have a higher risk. Other things in co-employer model, an FMS may say, this person cannot drive you in their car because of the liability involved in that. So there may be some restrictions that you have in the co-employer model that you wouldn't have in the sole employer model. But on the other hand, in the co-employer model, the FMS has all that responsibility for getting that liability insurance and obtaining workers' compensation and service insurance, but is still paid out of the spending plan. And it is the most expensive model, although I really must say that the differences between the different models are really modest, and we'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So how does it work when you interact with an FMS? You work by getting them the invoices and they make the payments. So each FMS is going to handle it in their own way, but usually the way it works is that, let's say you are using a personal trainer, and that personal trainer is in your spending plan. Well, you would be giving that information to your FMS, and that personal trainer would send their bill directly to the FMS, that their invoice, and their invoice will get paid by the FMS. In some cases, you may receive the invoice yourself, and then you forward it for payment to the FMS. For staff that you have, that you're employing directly, either through the co-employer model or the sole employer model, all the FMSs have their own portals for these workers to put in their time when they're clocking in and clocking out as staff for you. And I would think in almost every case, you as the person who receiving their services would have to approve their timesheets. And if the FMSs can correct me if you guys do it differently. You can also, if it's in your spending plan, direct the FMS to purchase an item for you. Let's say that there's a computer in your spending plan. You can find the computer you want that is within the budget that you set for it, and you can give the FMS the link for it, and they will purchase it for you. The one thing that I can say very, very clearly is that FMSs are not allowed to reimburse you. So do not go and put out the money and then expect them to pay you back. It is not because the FMSs are being sticklers about it. It is because the federal government doesn't allow it. It is in what's called our federal waiver, or our contract to have with the federal government for them to help fund our self-determination program, specifically prohibits FMSs from reimbursing participants or their families. I'm getting excited because I'm tired of talking, and now I'm going to hand it over to Molly Kennedy to explain how this all works.
Okay, so depending on how you set up your model and what you need in that model depends on how much you will pay a month for your FMS. Remember that your FMS is paid for out of your spending plan. So you need to allocate that as part of your spending plan. So if you're just having the FMS be a bill payer, depending on how many bills you pay, say like you have a cell phone bill and a gym membership bill, and you only have 3 or so, it's $50. The more people you pay in a month, the higher the rate will go. And if you have more than 7, you're getting a good deal for $100.
Yeah.
Under the participant sole employer, it's a little more for the number of services you have. Because it's not just paying the bills, it's doing the insurance and background check and that kind of stuff. So there's additional cost than just paying the bills. And if you are a co-employer, it's a bit more. Again, depending on how many people you pay, how many services you receive each month that need to be paid each month. Some of my services we pay in a quarter, so we can change it up. But you have to work with your FMS to go through and say who gets paid every month, and that will reflect in the rate per month under each of the models.
Yeah, that's perfect. What I want to make clear is that these are the maximum rates per month that the FMS is allowed to charge. They could charge less. You could negotiate a lower amount if, I haven't heard that actually happen because these numbers are really pretty small, these amounts, but how could it go higher? There is an exception in the rule. So somebody could potentially go to DDS and say, we have an extraordinarily complex self-determination program and a very large budget, and it's very difficult for an FMS to provide their services at the highest rate of $165 a month. And we have the money in our budget to do it. And you could potentially get DDS to say yes to this. I have not heard that happen yet, but I know of people who have tried, at least. Kathy Lou, I see your hand up, but we're going to take questions right after this, okay? All right. So go ahead with this one, Molly.
So again, the FMS works for you, but as Judy talked about in the beginning, you need to pick a FMS that is vendorized. They don't have to be in just your regional center. There are FMSs that are statewide. They just have to be a vendor. And some only serve their regional center and catchment, others serve the whole state or Southern California. But what you need to do is go to the DDS website under self-determination. Under FMSs, it's a few clicks, but there's a whole list. I know, Judy, you don't like the list, but this is a list.
This is the only list I'm okay with.
Okay, so you can pick from that list. Now, I would say I picked FMS. I didn't interview anyone because the community interface services was already providing me services. I like them. I work well with them. So I didn't interview any of the FMSs. But if I didn't know the agency as well as I did, I would interview at least 2 to 3 FMSs agencies to see which one fits that is right for you. And here is some questions. I think there's more questions we have in one of the books that DVU has created, but here's a short list. Which models do you provide? If they don't provide, some might just be doing bill payer. And if you need sole employer or co-employer, that won't work. So you have to find the one that does the model you need. How do you communicate with me? How do you tell me, like, when invoices are due or timesheets are due? And if that way didn't work well for me, how can we do it together? Like, they should be saying, how can we help you, instead of the other way around, because they are working for you. one big question is, how will they let you know if you're spending more in your spending plan than you should? Like Judy said, they should give you a monthly report, but like my FMS, they review it and say, well, you haven't spent a lot here in 3 months, but you spend a lot here in another category. Do we need to revise some things? And what are the hours that you are open? Like, can I contact you every day? And there's often be like, how soon do you need to know? I need this paid up front. All these type of questions. And they might have their own set of like, well, we won't pay anything up. We need 10-day notice.
Mm-hmm.
My FMS, I can give them 2-day notice,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to discuss that.
Right. So this is our final slide, and then we're going to move on to our panel. So how do you work with the FMS on a regular basis? And we've talked a little bit about this, but it's really important. You've got to get all the contact information for who you're going to be hiring and the services and items you're going to purchase. You got to get that information in very specific ways. So you need to get the email addresses of all of your staff so that they can, the FMS can onboard them. I've seen some people where that's like keeping them from starting self-determination because they haven't gotten the right information to the FMS. The FMS generally will train the staff that you hire on how to use the timesheet portal. Sometimes they might have a video or a written description, or they may speak to you directly. You make sure that if you have staff, you have to approve their hours. Don't delay on doing that, or else your staff are not going to get paid. Remember that if you're going to change your spending plan, which everybody does, and no one can decide a year in advance exactly what your life is going to be like, though you have to get that information to your FMS and your regional center. And you can also invite your FMS team or somebody from your FMS to be part of your planning process, creating your spending plan or going to your IPP if that's needed. All right, so I know that I've seen a lot of questions come into the chat. I promise you that Ed Herzl has been categorizing them, and we will make sure that they are all asked. But I want to introduce our wonderful panel. We have of FMS leaders. We have Mark Altieri, who is the Senior Director at Public Partnerships, which is an FMS based out of, you're in Boston, right, Mark? I think so.
Yeah, we're based out of Boston.
Out of Boston. Remember that self-determination is not just in California, it's around the country. So we have FMSs in California that have many years of experiences of working around the country. And I'll give each of them a chance to say something. Jason Berquist is here. He's the Director of Participant-Directed Services at Maine Self Services. And I believe you guys are based in Minnesota, or, okay.
You're correct.
And Minnesota, for anyone who wants to know, is like the center of self-determination in this country. And they actually have a center for self-determination there. Tericel Jones is the Director of State Services here in California for GT Independence. They are based in Michigan. Victor Lira is the President of Aviana Healthcare Support Services. You guys are based where? Here?
We're based in California. We have an office
California.
in Southern California, Northern California. Yeah, we're here.
And Gabrielle Steckman is the Vice President of Growth and Development for Acumen Fiscal Agents. Are you guys based here? I'm not even sure, Gabrielle.
We're based in Phoenix.
In Phoenix, great, wonderful. All right, so I just wanted to give you those names. I'm going to now turn off the sharing so that everybody can see each other. And I have some questions to get the ball rolling for our FMSs, and I'm going to ask them individual questions. But as you start your answers, if you want to say a little bit about your agency, feel free to do that. So first, I'm going to start with Victor Lira. Victor, when an SDP participant is looking for an FMS, how should they go about it? What should they be looking for in the process?
So when they're starting out the process, I mean, you hit some of the really good high points in your slides. When they really need to think about, what kind of responsibility do they want to take on, right? Do they want to hire people directly or not hire? That's sort of that key, question to ask themselves so that they can figure out, well, which direction do I want to go model-wise? Once they figure that out, then it's sort of, well, how much responsibility do I want to take on? Kind of like your slides said. If you want more control, more responsibility, then maybe you're thinking sole employer so that, you can make sure to have more authority to get exactly, who you want, how you want, when you want. Or do you want to sort of relinquish maybe a little bit of that, but then have a little bit more of a buffer in that co-employer model and say, well, I don't really necessarily, want that responsibility or as much, but I still want to have some control, which you would still have in co-employer. But I want to piggyback on the infrastructure of an existing agency. Okay, great. Then maybe that's the way I want to go. So those are sort of the two things that you want to figure out first. And then once you've sort of got that mindset, then literally pick up the phone and call the FMSs and start interviewing them, really. You can ask them crucial things like, like if you speak a foreign language, for instance, like what languages do you support? That's a big one, right? Because you need to be able to communicate in your own native language to make it the easiest transition possible. What's your experience like, working in this program? How many clients do you serve? If you are getting a little bit more savvy and you're starting to think about budget planning and spending plan stuff, you could ask them, how much is your workers' comp rate? Because the higher the rate, the less money you're going to have to spend on services and supports, right? And that's not a be all end all, but it's just something to take into consideration when you're asking these things. And more than anything, you want to ask, you want to get a feel for the FMS that you're talking to. Do you feel like, you're making a connection to the point where, when you have your loved one and they're being served by this agency, I mean, you're in charge, but at the same time, you need to know that you can depend on them and that they're going to be there for you when you need them. And you feel comfortable interacting with them, and your mode of communication, hey, are you guys more comfortable doing email, or can I just call you? Or, what are the processes to get the payroll done for the workers that I'm going to hire? And, again, if you're going down that spending plan thing, maybe what are the payroll dates? How often do you pay? That sort of thing there. So, all those sort of things that come along with, okay, and one of the other big things actually also is the FMS being able to meet you where you are in the process. Because we know there's a spectrum of folks right now in the state in self-determination that are just barely, starting out, and they're really not sure what to do, where to go, and how to do it, to ones that are sort of in the middle. Oh, I know how much my budget is going to be, but I'm not sure exactly what I need to do next to. Like, hey, I've got a spending plan, and I already did my person-centered plan. Now I'm at the point where I just need to get this thing off the ground. How can you guys help me? So depending on where they are, you want the FMS to be able to meet you where you are and then help to guide you down that path in conjunction with, obviously, your independent facilitator and how they're really going to be there to help you, whether you choose to hire somebody to help you transition or you use your regional center. But they should be able to answer those questions and really make you feel confident in their services and their abilities. If you don't feel that, then I would say definitely call around and keep trying to find one that makes you feel that way.
Great. And so real quick, Victor, just say what kind of services you provide at your agency.
Sure, thanks. So, I mean, we've been in the state now for, going on 15, 16 years. I kind of lost track. And we provide personal care services that range from, respite to personal assistance So now, of course, the FMS services for self-determination, as well as participant-directed services, not to cloud everybody's mind, but those are distinct service lines within the regional center system.
And which models do you provide of FMS?
Bill, payer, and co-employer model.
Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
we leave it to the other folks, the experts in sole employer, to go down that road and help those folks that need that extra control. So, yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Victor.
My pleasure.
Okay, the next question is for Jason Berquist from Mainsail Services. Jason, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the different FMS models?
That's a really good question. I think you covered a lot of it really well in the presentation. It really, well, first of all, for the bill payer model, that's really if you're not going to hire any employees directly. As you said, I've already seen some questions in the chat about that, so I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that if you want to hire employees directly, the bill payer model is not going to be for you, and you do need to choose one of the other models, the co-employer or the sole employer. And it really depends on how much control you want to have and how much you want the FMS to be involved in the hiring of your employees and how you manage them. Back to what Victor said, that's something you might want to ask your FMS too, because each FMS is going to be involved at a different level depending on what their policies are for their employees. There could be specific trainings that they require for all of their employees at their company. And so your employees might be included in that. They might require a background check of everybody instead of just the employees that are having personal cares under co-employer. Whereas under sole employer, the FMS is not the employer. And then, a lot of people, that sole employer sounds a little scary to people. Like I'm the employer, I don't want to be in charge of everything. And so ask your FMS about that, because your FMS can still help you. We're still here to guide you through things like employment law and things like that. And even finding, workers' comp and liability insurance. As Judy said, I believe all the FMSs here that do sole employer will help you with that. So it's not, you're out there on your own shopping for a workers' comp policy, et cetera. So see how that works for you. And the costs are different too. So that's another factor that you want to look at.
So Jason, real quick on Mainsail, what kind of models do you provide?
We do provide all three models. And we've been, as Judy said, we're in Minnesota. We've been doing FMS in California for over 10 years as well, doing participant-directed services, respite, nursing, transportation, and daycare.
Thank you, Jason. This is for Tericel Jones from GT Independence. So Tericel, I know that there's a lot of concerns in the self-determination program that the disparities that exist in the traditional system will remain in self-determination. And so how does a family or a person who's a participant who may come from a community that has been traditionally underserved, it's usually people of color, sometimes rural communities. How would you expect them to understand whether the FMS is going to be culturally sensitive, they're going to be culturally humble, and really understand the way that, some people are not good at budgets, some people are not, percentages and stuff, that is very complicated. How do you make sure that an FMS is culturally humble, and how do people ask those questions?
Oh, that's a very good question, Judy. I know some of the things as an FMS that we typically try to do is just basically really understand where the families are to be able to guide them through the process, making sure whatever their language that they're comfortable in, making sure that there's an available staff. Every FMS support different languages in different ways. So I know typically what we try to do is if the family does have a preferred language, making sure someone is available to be able to make sure that the communication needs are being met, to be able to explain those cultural barriers, to make sure that we eliminate any barriers that the families may have. I know we've had multiple meetings with different agencies, independent facilitators, and we've had our various different staff from different aspects within GT. I would also say the most important thing with families is that trying to help them through the process and really trying to simplify the language or simplify self-determination as much as possible. If that means giving them steps or guidance on how to approach the regional center, how does a person-centered plan or independent facilitator can help you with that, it's very important as well, all the way to the spending plan and trying to simplify that. I know that some FMSs do not help with the spending plan, but what tools or what resources do they have to help families if they even can't afford an independent facilitator is also very helpful. So I think it's being very involved, meeting with families where they are and providing resources that are simple enough to be able to help the families obtain self-determination and most importantly, be successful in self-determination. Because again, as the FMS, we're just paying the bills, but at the end of the day, the family is the one that owns the program and the family is the one that's driving self-determination. As FMS, we want to make sure we have those supports in place for them.
That's great. Okay, so tell us about GT Independence.
GT Independence, of course, we're national FMS. We're in about 12 states. We do offer support in self-determination in all three models. And we, aside from the self-determination, we do provide supports in the paid internship program, as well as participant-directed services as an financial management service provider.
Great, thank you. All right, my next question is going to Mark Altieri from Public Partnerships. So I know a lot of people have seen a lot of these questions, but I had already geared them up. It's, people want the FMS to do more, like buy us tickets in advance or reimburse us or get a subscription or a membership, buy something off of Amazon. How do you help people think about their relationship with the FMS and those kinds of expenses that they're going to have that's beyond the staff?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Wow, Judy, what a turnout to it. Over 200 people. Exciting. So one of the most frustrating issues in self-determination nationally, right? Judy already talked about this whole concept that the FMS can't make a direct payment to Terracell Jones, who might be enrolled in SDP. And wow, if we could preload debit cards for things like bus passes or the tickets or the membership, wouldn't it make life easier? It would. Unfortunately, like you nailed it, Judy, that it's federal Medicaid rules that really drive this whole. While I'm sure all the FMSs would love to give a debit card to the consumer and load it with funds, and you could probably pull it off. I've got good ideas about this, but you know what? They don't matter until that federal policy changes. So I think, when Victor was talking about that early conversation you're having with the FMS and maybe talking about what's in the spending plan, those participant directed goods and services, the assistive technology, putting it out there and up front. I'm going to need purchases made. How are you going to do that for me? We live in a world of Amazon Prime is now Amazon Now. Like we are now, if I'm authorized for a good, I want it quickly. So, the FMSs need to have creative payment processing ability. So for a good, like we're going to purchase it on our credit card and make the purchase so you get it on time, and then we're going to bill it. That's really the only way that can work, right? A gym membership, we're going to have to assist. A family doesn't know to go to the front desk of a place and start talking about Form W-9s and an FMS that needs to pay you, but I'm not quite sure what I'm even talking about right now. And then they say, what's an FMS? And you say, I don't really know. I just know I need your W-9. We need to help with that. We're all learning SDP, but I think putting out some of those, what your spending plan looks like early on, about how are you going to get me that Proloquo 2 app within a week once I give you my plan? Tell me. And you'll want to know, well, we're going to purchase it on our credit. We're going to send you the login ID and have a process for that. But it's frustrating. I do get it. So it's kind of outside the box processes for some of those, depending on who the service or the good, what the good is. I will tell you, in another state, albeit, but in the state of Pennsylvania, I got personally involved one time in trying to get a wheelchair for someone, but it was from a particular agency and a particular wheelchair that they wanted. And so that was calling their accounts receivable department. We're this payroll agent. We're going to make the payment for the wheelchair, but you're not going to send it. You got to do some of that middle ground. That's what we get paid month over month to do.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit about public partnerships.
Yeah, public partnerships, we go by the acronym PPL too. So if you're PPL out there, we founded in 1999. We've been in California doing PDS, the participant directed services with the Golden Gate Regional Center since 2012-13. And we do this around the country in 21 states. But I don't talk about that too much. You can talk about that, but SDP is its own thing. So you got to know SDP. It's fine if you know 20 other states. I don't care, right? You guys don't care. I want you to know SDP in California.
Thank you. And you provide which models?
Sole employer and bill
And bill
payer.
pay. Great, great. Thank you. And I have a question now for our final panelist, Gabrielle Steckman of Acumen Fiscal Agents. Thanks for joining us, Gabrielle. You know, when you have been working as an FMS here in California, I know it's not been the easiest road for the FMSs or for many of the participants. What are some of the greatest challenges that you've seen as you've been working here in the self-determination program?
Thank you, Judy, and everyone. And again, my compliments for such a well-attended meeting. It's really incredible, as Mark said. I think the biggest challenge I would highlight is the importance of everyone understanding the roles of everybody in the program. So what does the regional center do, the independent facilitator, the FMS, the participant, maybe a representative, their employees, et cetera. The clarity on those roles can really help in the orientation to those roles, I feel, and in my experience also, can really lead to greater success because people have just a better understanding about what they can expect and who does what. I think there seems to be a lot of folks trying to find the answers they need to keep moving with their critical services, and they're sort of going around the web of people that are trying their best to support them until they find the right person. So I think if there's a simple way to make that more clear, that would be incredibly helpful.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit about Acumen.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm Gabrielle. I'm based in Colorado. Fortunately, my colleague Yvette Torres out there in California is not feeling very well. Fingers crossed, it's just a cold.
Yeah.
So she sends her regards and wishes she could be there. And I think it's really great always to have local folks whenever possible. Acumen is based in Phoenix. We've been doing self-direction and self-direction only as an FMS for over 25 years. We are currently in 21 states. And one of the things I'd like to highlight that Victor brought up was we recently enhanced our technology to have 6 different languages supported through our systems, which for folks that like to use the technology to self-direct their services, that's very helpful to be able to have that in your native language. And we're about to add 7 more languages to that during 2022. So we're incredibly excited about that. And I think that's very relevant to the folks out in California.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I had several more questions, but I just feel like there's so many questions in the chat that I want to get to them. So Ed, if you wouldn't mind getting started with those.
Why, certainly. Let's get rolling here. So our first one that we've got, and I just got to say, we have a lot of really great questions today. Our first one is anonymous. Other than workers' comp and liability and other requirements of the individual FMS, I don't see the practical difference between co-employer and sole employer. Could you please explain?
Which of the FMSs want? We already gave our version, but maybe we obviously didn't give it very well because the question now came up. Which of the FMSs want to chime in on that?
I can chime into the co-employer effect on that. I'll leave the sole employer agencies to speak for themselves, but I know on the co-employer side, so, as it's been stated, sometimes we have more input because since you're going to be piggybacking on our infrastructure, right, you're using our insurances. We're essentially shouldering the risk involved with providing the service, right? For you to go out and hire people, you're going to still be doing all the hiring, firing, scheduling, supervising, training, and all the kind of stuff that you would already be doing when you go to hire somebody for yourself or for your loved one. But you're going to be using our insurances to cover them. If they fall down and break their leg in your home, that's going on our policy, right? Not yours. God forbid that happen. But so we tend to take a little bit more of a risk averse approach. Not that it's so conservative to the point where you can't get your services necessarily, but you want to hire your, Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill got a DUI a couple of years ago and a speeding ticket 6 months ago. We're probably not going to, allow Uncle Bill to transport, for instance, right? Where we tend to see this come up a lot actually is in some of the larger budgets, and by larger, I mean in excess of say $200,000 a year. Those tend to get a lot more complex, and those folks tend to need a lot more different things and flexibilities. And, when you need to hire 6 to 8 people, you got to draw in from a larger pool, you're going to have more of these things kind of come up. So, I mean, in general, that's kind of the trend that we've seen. But generally speaking, that's sort of like a good example that I could say, or it could even be like an extra background check. We do our own background checks in addition to the live scan that you have to do for DDS, for instance. We just feel that it helps to make sure that we're capturing everything that might possibly be out there, right? So if there's, a felony or something like that, I mean, obviously, hopefully the live scan would catch it, but, or if there's something, I think sometimes the sex offender registry stuff actually doesn't come up necessarily in the live scan, as wacky as that sounds. Then if we see something else that is a red flag for us, then we're going to bring that up and we're going to have a discussion about it. And at that point in time, we may say, you know what, we're not really comfortable with you hiring this person. Again, you can see some of the examples there. Your typical run of the mill, I need to hire somebody, everything works out fine, background's clear, driving record's okay. It's not as much of an issue, but there are some things that do come up from time to time where we have to either have a conversation or actually say, unfortunately, we can't really allow that person to work under our insurances because again, we're shouldering all the risk in the co-employer model.
Thank you. Do any of the FMSs who provide sole employer want to just talk a bit to make that separation? Mark, it looks like you want to.
Yeah, I mean, just to make the separation though, because I definitely don't want to talk about sole in comparison to co-employer, like you should do sole or you should do of course. It's like Victor just nailed it from top to bottom. I think with sole, I think people have, and Victor, Jason, Gabrielle, Teracel disagree, but some people don't like the paperwork that comes with sole employer. So just seeing an SS4 and getting an EIN number might be enough for some people to say, I don't want that. The 2678 giving some power of attorney to a payroll agent and an EIN number under my name. I just don't think I want it. And that's fine. Like, that's perfectly fine. I've definitely heard some families say co-employer's worth the extra per member per month just because I don't want to be near the employer identification number. I don't want the payroll agent appointment. You guys in co-employer, they do more to hire the employee, support with hiring the employees maybe. And that's what I want. And other people will look at sole employer. And I've definitely talked to families that I used to be a business owner. Like I know EINs, I know power, I know what a payroll agent, I'm totally comfortable operating in that space. And that's fine too. And I think, that is probably the piece is just that extra assurance, as Victor described, that you get with co-employer, but maybe your comfort level is such that I'm fine taking that piece on. And so it's such a preference thing. I think, you know, we definitely never try to get somebody who we're talking to, and it just sounds like the scenario Victor described. It's just, you're going to be better in co-employer. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you to do sole employer because we don't do it. I never want to see a family do self-determination and fail because we tried to jam them into sole employer, and it's just too much responsibility.
Thank you, Mark.
Can I add to that a little
Yeah,
bit?
go ahead, Gabrielle.
So I would say that I think all of those points are well noted for sure. Everyone should have choice. That's the idea, to decide what they want to do. I think the sole employer, people who are passionate, in my experience, again, of the sole employer model, are folks who really want that autonomy and full choice, control, power over their services. And to Victor's point, they still retain a lot of that in the co-employer model. You also, through many of us, I know for Acumen, you would have workers' comp insurance provided to your employees. So we would do that on your behalf to make sure you have that. And of course, run the background checks and things like that. Yvette out there in California, we were just jotting down some notes earlier today, and she said, with great power comes great responsibility. And that was her sort of summation of sole employer. And just, I didn't mention this, Acumen only does sole employer and bill pay. So we don't offer the co-employer model, and we only do sole employer in the 21 states we're in. So, you know, I feel very confident in the model. I think, to Mark's point, everyone should have a choice based on what they want to do and how much autonomy they want over their services. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you. Really helpful. Go ahead, Ed, with the next question.
Fabulous. So our next question that we've got is from Marlene. And Marlene asks, why did the legislature require to have the FMS paid for out of the person's budget? It's almost like the legislature didn't realize that if someone uses the bill payer model wouldn't work because you wouldn't have savings to pay for their services, let alone an independent facilitator.
I'm happy to take that one because I helped write the law. And so I know why this exists. So when we were fighting to get the self-determination law passed back in 2013, one of the only ways we were going to get the law passed was to assure what's called cost neutrality. And cost neutrality means that on the whole, around the state, DDS would be spending about the same on all the self-determination participants as they would have if they had stayed in the traditional system. And one of the ways to guarantee that is to say that your budgets need to remain the same regardless of the fact that you now have to pay for an FMS and you have to pay for an independent facilitator. But it really can work. And it's working throughout the state right now. It's working everywhere. It's working for my son. And the reason why is because if you are using an agency, so my son in the traditional system had a day program, which has expenses. A day program has a building that they have to rent, or they have, different levels of staff. They may have a copy machine, they have phones, they have administrative expenses that exist because they are running an agency. And so all of those, but when you decide about your budget includes the actual costs that are provided to that agency, which includes all those administrative fees. And so you're getting that full amount. So it's not like, let's say you have a day program and the day program is getting, let's say, $26 an hour for you. You get that full $26 an hour, even if you're going to pay your staff during the day only $18 an hour, because you are able to take those administrative costs and put them into your budget and use for things like an FMS, who is your administrative, they're your bookkeepers, they're your CPAs. They are providing that kind of service that the agency was providing. So that is how it is working right now. And I think in most cases it's working well. I think it's harder when you're talking about really tiny budgets. It's something that's on our radar for sure. Like, how do you make sure that they're primarily children with very small budgets who can't go into self-determination because the FMS costs would take away, half of their budget. We are very aware of this, and we have been advocating for some sort of solution for that group of people. We don't have that solution yet, but we hoped. Go ahead, Ed, with the next question.
Absolutely. So the next question that we have are actually a combination of two questions. Zonia is asking if any FMSs have folks who speak Spanish. And Melissa is also asking what supports or services do FMSs have to support deaf clients who might use ASL or other methods of communication?
Those are great questions. So I'm just going to go through each one, but in alphabetical order by the name of the person, not by the agency. So Mark, do you have Spanish speaking people as well as people who know ASL?
We have 50% of our customer service and enrollment support staff speak Spanish, and we have 13 languages spoken fluently on our staff, not through a language line. We have the TTY for deaf communication. We've done a lot more through this, right? Zoom now, like fire up a Zoom and can look at each other, and we have access to sign language ASL. So, I mean, I think modern technology has helped on that front.
Great, thank you. Jason, what about your FMS?
Spanish is not one of the languages we currently have a staff person directly in our program. We have people in our agency, but not directly in our program. We have also have Mandarin and Hmong, which isn't as common out in California as it is here in Minnesota. But for deaf participants, we also do use TTY, and Zoom has been really great for helping us with that as well.
Thank you, Jason. Teresa, what about GT?
Yes, absolutely. We have several of our field reps that are our bilingual staff. I see several of them on the call. Selvin, hey Selvin, I see you waving, as well as our internal team, our customer service rep as well, speak Spanish and Korean. And GT also offers the TTY as well for the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Thank you, Teresa. Victor.
Yeah, si toda la gente que contesta el teléfono habla español. So what I just said was all the people that answer the phone speak Spanish. We actually don't hire you unless you speak Spanish or Vietnamese. And then we can also serve Chinese as well in our offices. And then for the deaf community, what we've done is Zoom. We don't have TTY machines, unfortunately, at this point in time. But we have done Zooms and used the chat then to facilitate those conversations.
Thank you, Victor. And Gabrielle.
Yes, we have Spanish-speaking individuals in our call center. We also have TTY supported as well. And Yvette, our local person in California, speaks Spanish as well. And I will say, I was just at a conference this week where CMS was there, and they were starting to really frown upon the use of Zoom because it's not HIPAA compliant. And that's such a bummer, because I think it's such a cool way to provide these services. It's really frustrating, but there is good news on the horizon that they're looking at different solutions for our industry. So just a caution there that Zoom's a bit apparently risky now.
Oh, that makes my head want to explode, because I think for so many families and so many individuals with disabilities who have a difficult time getting out to meetings in person, Zoom has been a godsend for them. So
I agree.
As much as I hate Zoom, like, let me be very clear, I hate Zoom. It gives me headaches, but I do want to say that on the whole, I mean, we have 200 people at these meetings because of Zoom. So
I'm with you.
Yeah. I'm going to give Carla Lehman has her hand up, and I'm going to let her ask her question verbally.
Hi, thank you, Judy. My question is, like, my son entered self-determination in August, and at the moment when he entered, we were also trying to add another service that they were assessing and everything. So now we got the assessment, and after some fight, they approved the service, but now the rate is much lower than I see other ones getting. And they said it's the Meridian rate, but I see other ones getting like for that is for behavior. So they get like $65, but for us, like we got like $40 because they said that's the Meridian rate, but I'm not gonna be able to hire someone for that rate. So I'm not gonna be able to get the same amount of hours. So how does it work and why the rate is so much lower?
Who wants to take that?
Judy, I can help with this one if you like.
Go ahead.
So Carla, just to be clear, so when they finally agreed upon your budget amount, they based the hourly amount that they were for those services on the median rate. Is that what you're saying?
For this one, yes. But I mean, we did the assessment with an agency that usually like the hourly rate is like 63.
Yeah, so the median rate is there in place. So any new provider that enters into a specific catchment area or territory of a regional center, if you set up shop there right now, and let's say like I'm ABC agency, I go set up shop with Inland Regional Center in their catchment area and I open an office in their territory, I'm only going to be able to qualify for the median rate. Respite's a bad example because they're set rates. Let's say personal assistants. I'm only going to be able to get the personal assistant median rate, meaning that it's this like the lowest rate that they can possibly give. That's still a legacy dinosaur from when we had the Great Recession, and they still haven't fixed it yet. So they're not allowed to actually give the higher rates to brand new providers. And what's that done? It stifled innovation and it stifled expansion of services across the state. So what they did was they applied that in concept to what your services are going to be. Why they would do that for an SDP case, I don't know. But they're essentially saying that they're treating it as if you were opening an agency in their area and then that was the rate that you would get. That's the median rate.
So a new agency gets the lower rate?
New agencies for those types of, depending on the service code, yeah, they get those lower median rates because that's still written into the regs from like 2009 or 10. But if you want to message me offline, let's talk about which regional center you're at and see if we can't work together to shake something loose there.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm not gonna get, I live in LA when it's an area with a lot of traffic and nobody is gonna come here for that rate. And it seems really unfair because then what is that someone needs to do? Like wait until you get all the assessment and they get the services to enter self-determination to be able to get like a higher rate. You know, in that sense, it doesn't seem fair.
I totally understand. Yeah, if you reach out, I think we have each other's contact information and we can reach out and maybe have a conversation on the side to see if we could help you out.
Okay.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, Ed, next question.
Certainly. The next question that I've got is from, pardon me, Maria. For the bill payer, does that include staff that you hire directly? So could you not hire staff directly if you were using the bill payer?
Yeah. So as we said, with the bill payer model, you can have staff in your home supporting you, but they would have to work for an agency that carries that liability insurance and pays their paychecks. So instead of you having, Susie coming into your house and Susie is your employee and Susie gets paid for by the FMS directly their paycheck, you're using Susie who works for ABC's ABC Day Program, and the ABC Day Program is billing the FMS, but the ABC Day Program is paying Susie, and ABC is holding the liability insurance and holding the workers' comp. And all that the FMS is doing is paying a monthly bill from ABC Day Program. So I hope that explains it a little more clearly.
Thank you, Judy. Next question from Quargs. Can one switch to a different FMS if one doesn't work out? And I have another question from an anonymous person I'd like to chuck in there. When can you do that? Can you do that at any time? Does it have to be at the IPP? When can you do it?
Great question. Who wants to take that? Because I know I've gotten that question lots of times, by the way. How do people, if they're unhappy with their FMS, how do they change?
So I'll talk about this from the FMS standpoint, right? Because I'm not sure if certain regional centers have certain rules on when they want to allow changes. I don't know. I think we all know there's a little bit of variety across regional centers as to the policy, but strictly from an FMS standpoint, one, yes, you can change FMSs. You should be able to change during the plan year. I think my recommendation, just my recommendation would be, if you were in sole employer and wanted to change FMSs, I think the other FMSs would agree, it's easiest and cleanest to do it at the end of a tax quarter, because you've got one payroll company that was transacting payroll. Another company is going to take over. There are complexities with state unemployment tax withholdings, Fed, that I don't want to get into and get everybody concerned. It's doable. It's doable on a quarter end. I would recommend it happen on a quarter end. If you were moving from co-employer, so an agency's got an EIN number, and then you're going to move into sole employer where you're going to get the employer identification number. That one, I don't really see a need to do on a quarter end. And then in the perfect world, it probably happens if you can stay with the same FMS through a calendar year. Probably that's in a perfect world, but to the point, like, we are a key provider. We're the only required provider. The money is running through us. If we're not doing our job well, you 1000% need the ability to change FMSs, regardless of the time of year. That's the real answer. But I would say quarter end for sole co, you could probably go any time of the year, but just keep in mind, we're dealing with finances and quarter ends are best.
Thank you. Does any other FMS want to add to that, or you kind of agree with that? No? All right. So we're going to stop for a quick moment before taking our next question for a quick commercial break. Although we're not trying to sell you any item, we're trying to get your opinion. And I'm going to call real quickly to speak Allison Morantz. Allison is the director of the Stanford Intellectual and Developmental Disability Law and Policy Project, co-founder of Disability Voices United, and the parent of a self-determination participant. We're working with Stanford on a really important project that we need your feedback on. So go ahead, Allison.
Okay. So here's my pitch. Yeah, so we're really trying hard to understand from people who know it firsthand, like you, what the barriers are to enforcing your rights, in the regional center system. And so we are reaching out as widely as we can to different communities across the state to complete a survey. It's a pretty quick survey questionnaire. It takes maybe 10, 15 minutes max. And so we're collecting those surveys, and they're really important because there's an opportunity to sort of check boxes and, indicate whether you had particular experiences at different stages of the process, intake, fair hearings, IPPs, but also there's an opportunity to share your stories and sort of more detail. And all that will be really important in developing this white paper that we're going to share with policymakers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in the chat the information on, it'll be the links to the English version and the Spanish version of this questionnaire. And I'm really hoping a lot of you will complete it. Hold on, let me see if I can get it to work. Well, not always easy. Yes, I think it worked. Okay. It's in the chat right now. And it's pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email as well, but it should be pretty self-explanatory. Thank you so much. If you can take this time, it'll really make a difference. The more people that, that can share their stories, the more powerful and credible our results will be.
Please, please, please fill out this short questionnaire about your experiencing access, you're experiencing regional centers and whether they have denied you, if you've ever been denied services, and how that process worked. We're DVU and Stanford and the Integrated Community Collaborative and Disability Rights California are producing a report on this, and we want your input. So thank you so much, Allison. Okay, so Marta Chavez has her hand up. What is your question, Marta?
Hola, buenas tardes. ¿Me escucha?
Yes.
Sí, te escuchamos.
Ok. Mi pregunta es, quiero entender un poco exactamente cuál es el rol de la FMS, porque yo tuve un problema que haz de cuenta que asigné $600 para Lyft, pero el FMS automáticamente ponía esos $100, no tenían un control. Entonces, mi presupuesto se pasó, a ellos dicen que se pasó de $7,000 y también mi pregunta es, ¿quién es el responsable de pagar si algo se ha pasado? Y también si el rol de ellos es llevar una cuenta y decirme, ¿sabes qué? Aquí te pasaste o aquí te faltó. Porque yo llamé a la agencia y le dije, necesito saber cuándo me estoy pasando. Y ellos me dijeron, oh, nuestro sistema, ahí te puedes meter a ver qué es lo que está pasando. So, yo me metí al sistema de ellos y eran reportes diferentes todo el tiempo. Entonces yo llamaba y decía, oh, es que no entiendo por qué aquí me dice tal cantidad y tengo esta tal cantidad. Y ellos me decían que, oh, el sistema no está trabajando, olvídate del sistema, tú tienes que llevar la cuenta. Y pienso que para un papá, yo trabajo, tengo a mis hijos, es muy difícil para mí llevar una cuenta exactamente cuánto me estoy pasando o cuándo me pasé o me falta. Entonces quisiera saber cuál es el rol, si es mi rol hacer eso o es el rol de ellos llevar ese control.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to very briefly restate the question because our Korean interpreter Helen cannot hear the Spanish interpretation from Lorna. And for those of you who did not select English as your language, you also were listening to Spanish. So I'm just going to briefly summarize her question. Marta was asking, what is the role of the FMS in pertaining to making sure that there is no overspending in the budget? She personally has had a problem with the FMS, that the FMS was not allocating the right amounts. It sounds like with Marta's case, the reports that she was getting were not accurate, and that it ended up causing a problem where there was overspending in the budget. There was no one giving her a clue that the system was not working and that they were spending more than their budget allowed. She's a working mother. She has a child with a disability. It is impossible for her to keep track of all of this, and she really relies on the FMS to do this. So I'm wondering if any of the FMSs want to try to answer that question. They're not volunteering.
I'm happy to volunteer. I just don't want
Okay, good. Go ahead,
to talk
Victor.
up all the time. Yeah, so the role of the FMS is to make sure that you're getting consistent, accurate monthly statements, on a regular basis, usually at a prescribed time, right? Every month. So the family can use those statements to make sure that they're staying on track with their spending, right? And we don't have a choice, by the way. The FMS is mandated to send out a statement to the regional center and to the client every single month. And they're supposed to be identical and they should match. It sounded like she also had some issues with the statements where the numbers were off, they didn't exactly match, they changed from month to month. And then when she called them about it, she said like they were having issues with their system and it wasn't working properly. So they couldn't really adequately answer her questions. So, I mean, that would be one of those things where as a family member or a client, like I need to make a decision and maybe think about, are they still able to meet my needs, or is this just a hiccup You know, and honestly, at the end of the day, if you're overspending and we notice the pattern, then we're going to reach out to you and say, hey, by the way, you're spending a lot of money relative to what your budget, you know, says and has. Because ideally, we want to catch that 3, 4, 5 months before you get to the end of your budget year, because you want to have enough money left over at the end of the year to be able to get you through. I mean, God forbid you run out of money the last month and you can't, you know, get your personal care workers to come in and help you, and you have to go to work, or you need to run errands, or you just need to be able to depend on them to give you the support that you need for your loved one or for yourself, right? So the role of the FMS is to make sure that you're getting clear, accurate statements every month at the same time, that the numbers are correct and dependable, and that, you know, that they notify you if there is, you know, a high spend rate, and give you a heads up as well, by the way, as your case manager usually, because just because you're spending more doesn't mean you're doing it wrong necessarily, right? If you're spending more for a valid reason, if you're going over because it takes you an hour more to get home from work every day because of LA traffic, or, you know, the Bay Area traffic, like that's a thing, then maybe you need to go back and have a conversation, like an unmet need conversation with your regional center to say, hey, I just need enough to cover this last hour. You know what I mean? Because I'm consistently going over, you know, on 5 days a week for 1 hour or something like that. Like those could be symptoms of needs as well, right? So it doesn't mean you're a horrible person, but it also means that, you know, you've got to stop and think about it. Now, you know, if you need to cut back on a karate lesson or a swim lesson or something and try to fit everything into your budget, and it was adequately, you know, calculated, then maybe that's what needs to happen, because you got to spend within your means, right? But again, our role is to make sure that you get clear, accurate statements so that you have the responsibility and you have the information that you need to be able to make informed decisions. And then also to give you a heads up, hey, high spend rate here, service coordinator, hey, high spend rate, just everybody's on the same page, because we're a team and we want to make sure that we, you know, we all arrive at the same place together, safe, and that everybody has their needs met and that the client has a better life.
Thank you, Victor. So we only have a few minutes left. And so what I'm going to ask for the FMSs to do, and I'd really appreciate this, is to flip through some of the chat questions and see if there's any that you can just answer by typing. Some of them are really quite straightforward and easy to answer, and some of them are more complex. So we're going to take probably one of our last questions, Ed, from the chat that is a more complex question. That's not an easy answer.
Certainly. I have two that would be really great candidates.
And Victor, if I can have you look at the Spanish questions, I'd appreciate that.
Let me go with this one. I have a question for the FMS panel. When a participant is transitioning into the self-determination program who had been receiving skilled nursing services through an agency beforehand, and they want to pay the nurse more than what that agency has paid them, does the nurse need to become an independent service provider? Does the SDP participant have to choose the bill payer model, or can they choose the co-employer model? They want to do the co-employer model because they have other support staff who are non-licensed they will need to hire, and this will work best for them, but they're really not sure how this would work with a nursing position.
Sorry,
I have no idea what the answer is. Go ahead.
We ran into this very early on. And I will tell you that, you know, and I partnered with Jason at Mainsail for some of these cases too, and trying to help these families out. So there are certain state laws and regulations in California that say if you're going to employ a nurse that's providing clinical care in the home, that you have to be a home health agency. In other words, that's a licensed entity. The state has a whole bureaucratic department dedicated to surveying, issuing licenses, and then going in and auditing these places to make sure that they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, right? It comes with responsibilities, you know, medical records and doctor's orders and all that kind of stuff if you're an actual licensed agency. That's why if you go through the agency model and you're receiving nursing care, then you go to a home health agency to get those services. As a co-employer, our view is that if we take that nurse on our payroll and we're, you know, issuing them their payroll and they're working under our employer identification number, then essentially the state could say you're employing that nurse. You're not a home health agency, and then it gets very bad. So what we always recommend that is if you're going to get nursing services, you got to go sole employer, because if you're going to take them on as your own employee in your home, that's a little bit of a different story. It could still be considered potentially a gray area. But again, if you're doing sole employer and you're like, you know what, I need to hire a nurse and I'm not an agency, I'm not a third party that's, you know, sending this nurse out. So that doesn't apply to me. Great. So we recommend that folks, if they're interested in that, go sole employer, or you got to go agency, because then you just go to that third party agency and say, negotiate your rates and say, here's what we're going to do. It doesn't mean you can't go to those agencies, by the way, and say, I want my nurse to make X, you know, so what kind of rate do we have to have for that, for instance? Again, because those rate negotiations are what you're, you know, privy to do in self-determination that you're not in the traditional program.
Thank you, Victor. We have to end on time because we pledged to provide simultaneous interpretation in Spanish and in Korean, and our interpreters leave at 6. But there's just so many questions. Here's what I'm willing to do. And I will ask the favor of our FMSs on to go through some of the questions that are both in Spanish and in English that have been put in the chat. If you have any other questions, throw them in there. I'm going to stay on, transfer me to be the host. I'll stay on until as many of the questions are answered as possible. And I'm going to, somebody was asking for the names of the FMSs, and I'm going to show you that again here so that all of you see who they are, so that you have their names. Also encourage, if you haven't already done it, you probably have, the FMSs to put your contact information, not necessarily you personally, but the contact information for your agency on how to speak to someone for you to become the FMS. I want to say that these are not the only FMSs in California. There are other FMSs as well. I do not want to make the presumption that these are the perfect FMSs, and there are others here as well. You heard Molly speak about, she has a different one. I do want to make one point before we leave, and that is I just heard in the past week that one of the FMS agencies is going to stop serving self-determination program clients. And why am I completely blanking on the name? Which one is it? Help me. ARC Center. Thank you. Oh my God, it just went in and out of my brain. I'm so sorry. ARC Center. If any of you are using ARC Center as your FMS, you need to get a hold of them immediately, find out when they will stop providing this service, and start interviewing new FMSs so that the transition is smooth. This is quite a scary thing to me, that the FMSs are not going, that an FMS is leaving self-determination. And you need to make sure that you are taken care of, that you as a participant are taken care of by another FMS before, I believe it's the end of November, that they're going to stop providing these services. So please do that. Here's just a few who have options. I believe that there's probably another 4 or 5. The other thing is, not all of them provide services at your regional center. Some FMSs work only at one or a few regional centers. They specialize in a certain area. So I encourage you to go onto that DDS website, look under self-determination, and find your regional center and find the list of FMSs. In that list, it also has the contact information for your FMSs. So thank you all for joining us today. We will be back in 2 weeks. We're doing SDP Connect every other week. But in between next week, I just want to tell you, at this same time, we're going to be doing a completely different webinar. We're going to be doing one on the vaccine, on the COVID-19 vaccine. You may have heard, because we have sent out an email on it, that Governor Newsom and his Department of Public Health issued a mandate that all people who serve individuals with developmental disabilities must get vaccinated by November 31st. And that includes, I want to be clear, people in the self-determination program. It includes all providers of direct support services in the self-determination program must prove that they've been vaccinated, fully vaccinated, meaning the first and second dose, not the booster, but the first and second, the one dose J&J or the 2 doses of the other 2 vaccines. So we will be talking about that next week. We will bring up the point that self-determination is part of that mandate. So are IHSS workers who are not family members or people who are living with their client. So please join us. Join our mailing list. So thank you to our interpreters. We will stay on for a few more minutes just so that you all can get your questions answered by some of our FMSs. Thank you all for joining us. Take care. So in case some of you, I see people still joining us at 6 o'clock, even after 6, just want to let you know that our event is over. Our SDP Connect event is over. We're just staying on with some of the FMSs for a few minutes to try to answer some of the questions that were put in the chat. And we'll probably be ending. We're not taking any more questions verbally, everyone. So don't raise your hand. Put your questions in the chat and we will try to get your questions answered. But we are still on Facebook, but because we don't have interpreters, we're no longer going to be answering questions verbally. Thank you. And if the FMSs want to let me know when they feel they've answered most of the questions and gotten your information in there, and then we'll go ahead and end the session. Somebody was asking if the chat can be saved. Yes, we do save the chat. We will be able to have all of this information. Somebody's asking me which FMS I use, and I never reveal it. I do not want anyone to be biased in any direction. I don't say what kind of model we use. I also don't say which FMS we use. And when people ask me, what program is your son in? My son is not in a program. He lives a self-determined life. So you guys figure out what works for you, okay? We still have 100 people on. I cannot believe this. You guys are amazing. Oh, Fernando Preciado reminded me that there's no November 31st, it's November 30th. Yes, thank you, Fernando. I should have known that. Are we getting closer, folks?
I think so.
All right. I think what I am going to do is stop our recording.